Good morning, everyone. I'm Jordan Ifield, and I'll be the clerk for this morning's subcommittee meeting, and I'm pleased to welcome you to this meeting of the subcommittee. I'll take the subcommittee through the first 3 agenda items. If anyone intends on recording the public proceedings of this meeting, please make this known now. So this is not to prevent you, but to ensure that all parties are aware. Okay. Thank you. Item 1, apologies. We've received no apologies. Item 2, substitute members. We have no substitute members. And item 3, election of a chairman. Can I please ask for a nomination?
I nominate Councillor Clive English.
I second that.
Okay, thank you. I now let Clive English be our chair for today's subcommittee meeting.
Thank you very much, Jordan, and good morning to everyone. Moving on to item 4, are there any disclosures by members and officers? Thank you very much. In that case, moving to item 5, are there any disclosures of lobbying? I have to disclose that I've been lobbied by 3 representations. Any other one?
Me too.
And I have as well, Chairman.
Moving on to item 6, to consider whether any items should be taken in private because of the possible disclosure of exempt information. I intend to take item 7, the application for a premises licence for the Cornwallis School, Hubbards Lane, Bolton, Montchelsea, Kent, in public as proposed. To consider the application, the subcommittee will hold its deliberations after the evidence is presented in private session with the legal advisor in attendance only. We will then, after that, come back into public session to announce our decision, obviously. Is that agreed, members? Thank you very much indeed. So, without further ado, we move on to the application for a premises licence for the Cornwallis School at the address as said previously, and I will now ask that all persons participating in this hearing identify themselves, starting with the members of the subcommittee. My name is Councillor Clive English, and I'm chairing this hearing this morning. To my left is
Councillor Bob Hinder, Ward Member for Boxley.
And Councillor Denise Joy, Ward Member for High Street.
Helen Ward, Legal Advisor.
Lorraine Neal, Senior Licensing Officer.
and the applicant, please.
Mason Dadson, Marketing and Events Manager for Future Schools Trust, the applicant's party.
And the interested parties.
David Sanderson, resident of Salts Avenue.
Good, thank you. Valerie Sanderson, resident of Salts Avenue.
Tanya Fisher, resident of Salts Avenue.
Can I ask that all parties confirm that they have received a copy and are aware of the subcommittee hearing procedure?
We have.
Okay, thank you. In that case, the subcommittee will allow all parties to put their case fully and make submissions to the panel within a reasonable time frame. The procedure will take the form of a discussion led by the subcommittee. Any persons in attendance behaving in a disruptive manner may be directed to leave the meeting, including temporarily, after which such person may submit to the subcommittee in writing any information which that person would have been entitled to give orally had they been present. If this is not possible, they may be allowed to speak at the chairman's invitation. I'm sure that won't happen, but I have to read that out anyway. I will now ask that all subcommittee members confirm that they have pre-read all the papers and other documentation regarding the hearing.
Yes, I have.
Thank you very much, members. Lorraine Neal, the Senior Licensing Officer, will now briefly outline the details of the application. Lorraine.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, members. This morning you're being asked to determine this new premise licence application submitted by Future School Trust for the Cornwallis School, Hubbards Lane, Bolton Monchelsea. The activities requested are live music, recorded music, performance of dance, 11 to 10 p.m. Friday to Sunday, supply of alcohol on sales only Friday to Sunday 12 till 10 p.m. The opening hours are Monday to Sunday 6 till midnight. That's obviously being a school, they're open most days. Also listed, I've put on page 1 the exemptions that apply to schools, and in essence that means that the majority of licensable activity can take place without a licence. It's the alcohol that will always require the licence. Okay. So the application was correctly advertised in the local press and at the premises for the statutory period. No comments were received from responsible authorities. However, 56 comments were received from other parties. They're listed at page 6 in the report, and the comments in full are attached as Appendix 3. The applicant contacted licensing on the 8th of March, explaining that his main reason for applying for the licence was really to cover the event in November, which is their fireworks event, and that basically it usually was covered under the provision of a temporary event notice, but it no longer qualified for that because of the numbers in attendance, and it did now require a premise licence. He also advised that there was a meeting, Lewes Parish Council, they were discussing it. He couldn't attend that meeting, but he provided a letter to the committee to consider. He provided a copy of that letter to me, and that's attached as Appendix 4. Also on the 3rd of April, the applicant, when replying to the witness attendance documents that were sent out to him, explained that he would be quite happy to offer up a condition where he restricted the licence to 4 events a year. That information was circulated to all the other parties, and there were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 that responded to say that in principle they were quite happy with that condition and would withdraw should it be applied to the licence. One person also said on the basis that they were single events rather than like a 4-day Glastonbury festival, wouldn't consider that at all. So members are asked to consider when determining the application, Part 3, Section 16 to 24 of the Licensing Act and Section 4, particularly licensing objections, the guidance issued under Section 182 of the Licensing Act 2003, Chapters 8 and 9, specifically licences and determining applications, and the relevant policy statements contained in Maidstone Statement of Licensing Policy. And members today, their options are to grant the licence subject to conditions as are consistent with the operating schedule accompanying the application, to grant the licence with modified conditions, exclude a licensable activity, refuse to specify the DPS, or reject the whole or part of the application. Thank you, members.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Neal. Do members of the subcommittee have any questions on the report by the licensing officer? No. I think most of them will be come up later. Right, in that case, we now go over to the applicant, who have the opportunity to make your initial statement.
Thank you. Good morning. As I said, I'm the Marketing and Events Manager for Future Schools Trust, which is the trust that kind of oversees Cornwallis as well as 3 other settings in the Lewes Parish. I would like to extend my thanks for allowing me to speak here. At Cornwallis,
Mr.
the
prime... You don't need to be quite so loud. There is a microphone.
I'm used to speaking quite loudly in a school, so... Sorry, there we go. Obviously at Cornwallis, the primary mission and objective has always been to provide outstanding education to all students, fostering their growth and preparing them for future challenges. In addition to that, obviously the school's core educational objectives, we are committed to enriching all of our students and the local community through various events and activities. The events are designed not only to support students' experiences, but also to engage with the wider community, promoting some unity, understanding and mutual respect. Our intention in seeking this premises licence is just to facilitate these community-focused events and providing a safe and welcoming environment for all of the attendees. We believe that by doing so, we can, in fact, strengthen the bond between the school and the wider community, creating lasting connections and opportunities for collaboration. I would just like to state now there is an error in part 3 of the application in the operating schedule where it does say that we have no immediate neighbours, and I would like that removed, and councillors to note that, please. I understand and take on board all of the objections, of course, and comments, and it would be remiss of me to not reference these. Although it would be of an unbiased opinion, we do constantly work with all of our residents regarding complaints. Just talking about events, and that we always supply residents in the last couple of years with a noise complaint lines and discounted events tickets. And in 2023, across 2 events, we had 1 complaint that was received 48 hours after the event actually took place. All events put on by the school are clearly advertised, and those that reside near the school are given advance notice. Many objections have been raised around the openness of the licence, and as Lorraine said, as you can see in the pack there, we are wanting or willing to put forward a condition of 4 events. That isn't in any way a separate entity to the notice that I sent to our parish council. The school at present have no intention of doing anything further than our fireworks display. However, looking into this further, there are other events that take place on site, such as the Heart of Kent Hospice Charity Run, that would need to be covered under this event as well. This premises licence. We would also welcome, obviously, any licensing officers to attend any events, and would write to the licensing team with 3 months' notice, the licensing team or the committee, however, that you would want that stipulated, of any community events based on the site. We will assure you that any conditions will be adhered to with regulations and guidelines associated with the premises licence, and obviously the paramount of importance to us is the safety and well-being of all attendees, no matter what event it is. Our aim, like I said just a minute ago, is to make a positive, long-lasting impact on all of our wider community, whether that is a student, whether that is a parent, whether that is someone that is coming from down the road, whether that is someone that's next door. We really do have that goal as a school. We want to work with our community as much as possible. We do appreciate your time and consideration for looking at this, and we look forward to working in the future with you. Obviously, you've already said it's a bit of an open forum after this, but I'd just like to say, if anyone requires any further information about how we've dealt with previous complaints, whether it's related to events or other entities, I am more than happy to take them questions. I do have some information with me, and I invite you to do that at a time appropriate to you as the committee. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Right, well, that's very interesting. Do the subcommittee have any questions for the applicant at this point? I have a couple. Councillor Hinder, did you indicate?
Do you feel perhaps that you inflame the situation in your initial application by stating that you are well away from any residential properties?
Completely, yes. Completely. We did this application in collaboration with a company that helped us. It was completely my mistake of not taking this bit out when they sent across the different sections to put in. I did kind of read as much of it as possible, but the operating schedule I thought would have been quite clear to them as to what we wanted in that section. So when we asked for their advice, they popped that in, and that has completely, like you said, blown. A lot of the objections are that point. So yes.
Any further questions? Well, Councillor Joy.
Thank you. You spoke about the school family. Sorry, I'm a governor. To me, when I go in my school, it's part of a family. And you touched on the community, and you very rightly said you got it wrong about no one around in the area. My question really is, in the past, and I know we're not talking about the past, but I'm looking to the future when I ask this question, how would you go about informing residents of something that's going on? Would it be a poster up? Would it be a leaflet drop? I'm just a bit interested.
We send a letter, to all of the surrounding neighbours. Last year, I hand posted them. Previously, we have put them in the post, but last year, because we wanted to get it out with enough notice, I was quite tight, so we hand delivered to all of our immediate neighbours.
And you mentioned just one complaint in all that time. Can I just clarify
Yeah, so
That's
across the
correct.
2 school events that we had last year, one being a firework night and one being a school fun fair, there was one email complaint that got through to myself, and I've also checked with my CEO and head teacher, and that came on the Sunday after the firework night
And was responded to?
and was responded to.
Thank you very much.
Couple of questions. I understand the need for a licence for firework displays. I'm a member of Bearsted Parish Council, so we very much come across this issue because we run a very large firework display. Now, what I'm not quite clear about is the logic for applying for a licence which relates mostly to a firework display, which is by definition an evening event from 12 noon on a Friday. I'm not quite sure why. Could you explain the logic?
In essence, no, I can't. Being completely honest, we are open to other events going forward. You know, I've said that we have no intention of doing fireworks or doing anything more than fireworks. But you know, going forward, there might be the odd thing here and there. Since obviously putting this license in, I've been made aware about the fact that we would need to use this for the Heart of Kent Hospice charity run, which would take place mid-morning, and the music of that starts as people come back in the afternoon. So that would need to cover that.
And I imagine you'd be quite aware that there's one thing having alcohol sold in a school for an event in an evening or a weekend. A rather different situation applies if the school day is still running, which at 12 noon on a Friday one would assume it would be. So you.
Yes, no, the Friday is to cover our fireworks event. Our fireworks has in previous years started as early as 3 o'clock because it sits in the half term. So there are no students on site as students at that point unless they're attending with parents.
Conclude this point then, would you be open to a condition relating to the fact, make it clear that you could not sell alcohol when the students were on site during the school day?
Yes, absolutely.
Just need to clarify that point.
Of course.
Councillor Hindu.
Thank you, Chair. Would you also be open to having a condition, if we granted this, that this granting was for a firework night only?
We would need to have. We would need to support the Heart of Kent Hospice charity run that's already taking place in March. That is, so we would accept the condition of, at the moment, could accept the condition of 2 events, and if necessary, also we have also discussed a duration for the condition in terms of the actual event and a bit of before and after in terms of noise for setup and packing away.
Clarify in terms of the Heart of Kent Hospice event and potentially similar events. Is this an event organised by the school or is it organised by the Heart of Kent Hospice? Because obviously that does make something of a difference to how the licence is treated.
Yeah, it is organised by the Heart of Kent Hospice. We work with them on it, and it is on our site, so they could go elsewhere, 100%. But my understanding is the licence is for the site.
The reason I'm asking is simply because obviously there is a difference in the treatment of an event, potentially if it's organised by the school or if it's a third party, and we need to be absolutely clear.
It is a third party letting that we work with.
Thank you. Any further questions at that point? Councillor Joy.
Sorry. Fundraising events, do you see yourself maybe, if another event comes in, hiring the school to be used for an event?
If the license, if we're able to do so with the license, then yes.
You would.
But at the present we have no inquiries.
Do you mind if I ask?
Yes, of course, you can.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to ask a few questions to pick up on some of the things that have been mentioned. For the fireworks night, what do you expect attendance to be? What sort of numbers would you normally expect?
Approximately 2,000.
And the same question for the Heart of London.
Last year, I believe, had about 300 or 400 runners, so could be covered under a 10 if necessary.
300 to 400?
Yeah.
So that wouldn't go over 500?
No, so that could be covered under a 10 if necessary.
Thank you very much. The reason I ask is something that the Chair was referring to, is that regulated entertainment is exempt for schools that are operating on behalf of the school.
Sorry, yeah.
So if, without predetermination, one thing the committee might look at is whether you actually need regulated entertainment here, or whether you could have it as something that is exempt. Do you have anything that you'd like to say about that?
No.
Okay, that's fine, thank you. Couple more questions. And just to clarify them, you would be open to a condition that restricts the licence to 2 events per year?
Yes.
Okay, and those events not lasting more than a single day?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. Now I will turn to the interested parties and ask if they have any questions for the applicant, starting with Mr. Sanderson and working.
Excuse me, ladies and gentlemen of the panel, thank you very much. Right, my apologies, thank you very much. Mr. Danson, reflecting on what the legal advisor has just said, during your comments, you've added, and the odd week here and there, and we would be open to other events if people approached us. Now, I think what you've been saying is you've been trying very hard to say that it is purely for the fireworks, but you are keeping your options open. And I believe, and a lot of the residents do believe, that the intention is basically to hold as many events as possible. Can you clarify absolutely once and for all whether this is just for the fireworks event?
If we don't need a licence on site to be able to assist the Hertford Kent Hospice with their run from an entertainment point of view, then we purely want this for our community-based event, which is Fireworks Night, which is 1 night a year.
Thank you. Certainly the majority of the concern from myself and from other residents is that you haven't been clear, and the initial wording of the application, which you say was a mistake, made it quite clear that that was an application for an open licence, which would have severe repercussions. If it is purely for the one event, I would like that noted. Thank you.
Mrs. Sanderson, or Miss Sanderson, I'm not
Mrs.
sure.
Thank you. I have no questions at the moment, thank you.
Miss Fisher?
I do have some comments that I'd like to make. I had actually written out things that I would like to express. Do you want me to pick it out in question form?
You will have the opportunity to make your case. This is mostly for questions from what the applicant said.
Okay.
But every interested parties will be able to make statements shortly.
Thank you. Can I just ask one question then?
Yes,
in that
of course.
Thank you. You did suggest that you had made it clear to the local area, and you had used the local press to inform people of your intention to get an alcohol licence and so on. What was your reach for that? Certainly as a resident, I didn't get any information at all. So how was your form of informing neighbours? And in fact, Watermont-Chelsea, which adjoins your school also, Parish Council had not been informed about any licence application whatsoever. So I'm quite concerned about how you do reach everybody and allow people to have a say in what your intentions are.
So just for clarity there, I said that we contact all of our immediate neighbours when we hold an event. I didn't state that we contacted them for this event licence, for the premises licence. The licence was displayed as specified by the licensing team on the site and in the KM, as you have to do within the statutory 10 days after it being approved by the licensing team to go out. And in reference to the fact the Parish Council contacted us regarding this and asked us for our comments because although yes we do border, I completely appreciate that, we are in the Lewes parish. That is the only reason. So we didn't go out to the Parish Council, and for anything further, if we state that we're going to contact the licensing committee, we would also contact the Parish Council of all of our neighbouring parishes, because there are quite a few on that corner.
Thank you, Chair. Just to clarify that the application was advertised as it lawfully has to be. There's no additional requirement to notify neighbours.
Thank you, that's very important to know. Right, so I think that's all the questions on at this stage. So we now turn to the interested parties in turn to make their statements. So starting with Mr. Sanderson, please.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to object to the Cornwallis School Events Licence on the following grounds. Number one, public nuisance. The noise currently suffered by local residents from the Cornwallis school site is a growing entity. They already hold a regular fireworks display and other end-of-term events. The noise from these is absolutely insufferable. It's not just the fireworks, which detonate directly over the house, but the noise from the amplified music and public address system, which is the worst. In previous years, every word over the public address system resonates throughout the house, and the music makes the windows literally shake. I've sat inside with all the windows shut, having to wear military ear defenders, and still this is not enough. The only way to deal with it is to leave the house. When I've complained to the school, the only response from them is that the event is for the good of the pupils, and they will give us notice when a future event is to be held. I know of other residents in Salts Avenue and Hubbards Lane who are forced to go out when these events are held in order to escape the noise. The noise levels from the existing events is real, regular, and unacceptable. It has serious and tangible negative impacts on the quality of our lives. Awarding a licence will enable the school to host more and larger events, which will increase the noise nuisance. Number two, public safety, emergency vehicle access. I was a police officer for 30 years, over 20 of which were as a traffic officer and emergency response driving instructor. I trained emergency driving on all vehicles, including large vehicles and fire engines. The main school entrance is in Hubbards Lane, with secondary access from Heath Road. Hubbards Lane is 4.65 metres wide, with pedestrian pavement each side of 1.3 metres. The minimum width requirement between curbs to allow access for a fire appliance is 3.7 metres. These figures obtained from Kent Fire and Rescue. I testify from personal observations that during these firework events, the parking provided at the Cornwallis site is not sufficient and not adequately controlled. Members of the public park their vehicles in large numbers on the road and pavements in Hubbards Lane. This reduces the available width to under 3.7 metres, which would, in an emergency, in my professional opinion, and backed up by KFRS figures, severely restrict or completely prevent the access of emergency vehicles to the site. The public also park in large numbers on Heath Road during these events, historically completely blocking the only pavement for pedestrian, pushchair and wheelchair access from Linton Crossroads to beyond Hubbards Lane. Issuing a licence will result in many more vehicles attending and causing further obstructions. I wonder whether I should say this, but there is also a pattern of misleading behaviour by the Cornwallis representatives. It's awkward, but these are present in both the application.
You probably literally the first time. You shouldn't say that.
I will accept that, sir, and my apologies. My apologies. I would also like to say that there is an existing noise dispute between Cornwallis and the surrounding residents. In the previous 5 years, there was not one noise complaint registered by the council. So far, since this has been used, there have been over 100 complaints made to the school alone, and this does not include figures made to the council.
I'm going to have to say that we do have to stick to the licensing issues.
Apologies.
And not the environment.
Yes, sir.
Ms. Ward.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Just to clarify, you can only raise matters that were in your original representation.
Okay.
So matters to do with public safety that you've raised and complaints received by the council, the committee won't be able to place any weight on that because it wasn't included in the original application.
Okay.
And environmental health aren't here to be able to qualify any of the comments on noise
Okay,
complaints.
thank you.
Thank you.
Right. In that case, Madam Legal Advisor, do you have my original in front of you? You do? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. May I comment on paragraph 5 that begins with failure? Thank you, sir. A planning condition imposed on the approval of the football pitch was the no whistle policy, and this is not adhered to. On most days that the pitch is in use, whistles can be heard. After 6 months of complaints, the policy is still not being followed. There are notices asking users of the site to leave quietly and not use vehicle horns. This is also not adhered, and further disruption is caused after the official end time. And in view of that and other things, we, the residents, have no confidence that the school will adhere to conditions that are placed. And to conclude, the application will significantly negatively affect many local residents who are already having to suffer a real loss of peace and enjoyment in their own homes. There used to be no noise or light pollution here at all, and now the events being held at Cornwallis site are having a major negative impact on residents and the quality of their lives. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Sanderson. Now we go to Ms. Fisher.
Thank you for allowing me to speak. Some of the things that I may bring up may have all...
Sanderson, can you turn your mic off when you finish, because it interferes with the other speaker.
Sorry. Thank you for allowing me to speak. Some of the issues I may raise may have already been spoken about briefly by the applicant. So it's just sort of so that I can put my point across, if that's okay. I am a local resident. We already do hear the noise of shouting, whistles and foul language from the players and supporters when they are using the artificial grass pitch. We do understand a temporary premises licence is currently granted each year for the purpose of the fireworks evening, and we had initially been informed that this was the only event that would be taking place, and as the school wanted to increase the attendance numbers to over 500, a full licence was the only way that they could achieve this, and that's how we've understood the reason for the application. However, a recent correspondence has now led us to believe that the application would be for no more than 4 events per year. In view of this, I wonder if the committee are confident of the applicant's undertaking and will be willing to agree a licence that could open up changes to events once the licence is granted. Of course, an increase in footfall brings revenue for the school, but increasing concerns too, such as health and safety, policing of alcohol consumption, and a further potential for antisocial behaviour and increased noise and disturbance. Very, very importantly, and something I feel completely passionate about, and I'm sure the school take seriously safeguarding, and it has to be considered at this stage too. In my view, it is totally and morally inappropriate for a secondary educational setting to be applying for an alcohol licence. For some pupils, school is a constant, a safe haven, and a place to learn without such distractions and influences that could be detrimental to young students. Bear in mind they are aged between 11 and 18 years. What message is this giving to young students who attend the school? Does the committee consider it appropriate or necessary that a secondary school setting should be granted such a licence? And who will be tasked with keeping all pupils safe during and out of school hours? Surely there are concerns it could be open to abuse and encourage underage drinking. I appreciate the applicant has gone some way to appease our concerns, but the goalposts have moved already. Let's not forget this is not just about the large-scale events. The application also stipulates the selling of alcohol at weekends from midday to 10 p.m. Mondays to Fridays to Sundays, when most residents are likely to be home and children in their gardens. The school is not a public house or a football stadium. Therefore, we need clarity and transparency on what the applicant's real intentions are, to enable the committee to be confident the applicant would adhere to any conditions if the licence was granted. The Heart of Kent, as recently mentioned, the Heart of Kent charity run, does that really need an alcohol licence, particularly if it's taking place in the middle of the day? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Turning to Mrs. Anderson, please.
Good morning, I'm Val Sanderson, I live in Stalks Avenue and my property backs onto the school. The school have said to allay some quite relevant concerns, we have no intention of having a full year premises licence. As a condition of usage, we will propose to the licence to be no more than 4 events per calendar year. The fact that the school have said some quite relevant concerns indicates they are aware our concerns are indeed relevant. Excuse me. If the school is granted this licence, even though they say they only want it for 4 events per year, and on social media they say they only want it for the fireworks, it is a floodgate to open for them to hold an event as proposed in the licence every weekend, should they wish to do so. The firework event is primarily for the children and it's totally unsuitable and unsafe to allow the sale of alcohol in an educational establishment for this event. If the school is granted this licence, then there will be increased parking issues in adjacent roads as the school car park is not sufficient for this capacity. I wish to strongly object to the application by Cornwallis School for a premises licence. The school is behind my property and we are already subjected to an unacceptable noise problem relating to the football. Despite complaints, the school do not adhere to the planning policy and are unsympathetic to the views of local residents that back onto the school. The fact they say the schools say there are no immediate neighbours that this will affect is simply untrue. The application for a licence to hold events at the times requested is totally unacceptable. The school hosts a few events per year and we are subjected to loud music and a tannoy system that we can hear clearly with our doors and windows closed and music so loud that our windows vibrate. To be subjected to this should the licence be granted would be intolerable. We live in a quiet road, but our quality of life has already been greatly reduced with the football noise, shouting, whistles against planning policy, and the noise of spectators shouting, screaming and swearing that we can hear clearly 7 days a week. During the winter months, we can hear football noise indoors with our windows closed. It is totally outrageous that I will not be able to sit in my garden of my dream house in peace and tranquility at weekends with what the school proposed that this licence should be granted. The school are misleading the committee if they claim there will not be an impact on local residents. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. Right. At this point, I turn to the subcommittee and ask if they have any questions for the interested parties at this point. No. No, I don't think I do. You?
Yes, please, Chair. Thank you. A question for all of you. During the hearing today, the applicant has said they would be happy to limit the licence to 2 occasions per year. Now that, just to be clear, from some of the comments you were making, it doesn't mean, that would mean they could only use their licence for 2 events per year. Sorry. The applicant has offered to limit the licence to 2 events per year. That means they wouldn't be able to use it every weekend. They could only use it for 2 events of a single day on each occasion. And secondly, there was a condition discussed about alcohol not being sold during the normal school day. Does that change your opinion at all? Do you have any comments on those conditions if they were added to the licence? And I should also add, conditions on a premises licence, if you breach them, it is a criminal offence. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate the offer made. For me, the size of the fireworks event as it exists is sufficient. There are the parking problems, there are the access problems, and Mr. Dadson said that he hoped to bring in 2,000 people. Well, that is more than 4 times the existing footfall. So, already having seen the parking problems in Hubbards Lane and along Heath Road, I really believe that that is untenable. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Oh,
Just check there aren't any questions.
Sorry. Could I just mention that the applicant has already referred to the fact that potentially other third parties may apply. to use their premises, knowing that there's a licence on site if it's granted. I know their partners are Maidstone Football Club and Dance Studios, Dance School, and they already have premises in their own areas for such events to take place. So my stance on it stands. I am really concerned, and particularly the safeguarding element. Thank you.
Thank you. Do any of them...
Just going on from that, I do apologise. You say, if the school say they have no intention of holding more than 2 a year, but if someone approaches the school and said, could we hold an event because you've got a licence, that would be a great concern. Okay.
Sorry, I think there's a misunderstanding. If there were further events to be held that are not covered by a licence, they would have to apply for a temporary events licence, assuming they're under 500, or seek a revision of the licence. You couldn't just, whether it's a school or a third party, if it's because they've combined the issue, you couldn't have more than the 2 events, and if they just went ahead and had the 2 events, that would be a breach of the law. So I think we need to be clear of what we're talking about. The other thing is, I did want to ask whether, it's more, whether, no, I don't actually need to ask that because I think you've covered that. Does the applicant want to make any questions to the members of the public and interested parties? I'm sorry, could you turn your mic off as well if you finish speaking?
Oh, good.
I haven't got any questions, no. Obviously, if you have any questions about what they've said, I would most happily answer them, but I don't want this to be a comment form of what they've stated.
Joy, please.
On the firework, seems to be the one where there's a big number, 2,000. May I ask, obviously you must do a risk assessment and all the things that schools have to do. I don't know how many years you've been doing it.
So we've now successfully run 3. There should have been a 4th, but it was during 2020, so that one was cancelled.
And you stated there would just been the 1 complaint.
So there was 1 complaint last year.
Yep.
There was a complaint the year before by the same party, and there was no complaints prior to that.
Thank you. However, after the event, you must all come together to say, haven't we done well, and a pat on the back.
All of our school events, whether they're a parents' evening, an open evening, whatever, I go to our leadership meeting with our head teacher, and we do what went well and an even better if, and that always gets noted for the next event, and we do take on board everything.
So in those 3 events that have been over, was it 2,000 people there? Obviously parking, which we can't deal with that, but has there been any other instances where you thought, we'll change this because we realise this is having an impact on the very close neighbours that are in that vicinity, or has it just been the same every year?
No, every event we do, we change stuff, not relating to this at all, because it wouldn't be a licensable activity. Our open evening last year had 750 families attending, which 750 families tells me there's 750 cars. Our car park does only have 245 spaces. However, we repurpose different areas of the site, fields, and have traffic management on site, not on the road, admittedly. However, if needed, we would look to employ that for said events. But we do have the South East 4x4 group who do all the Leeds Castle events and everything like that on site to actually manage the car park as such. And we repurpose fields. One of the playgrounds turns into, or 2 of the playgrounds, we move benches, everything. So obviously, Cornwallis is getting a much bigger school in terms of actual student numbers and much more popular. So we're having a lot more people through our doors for non-licensable events, and we are managing that in those numbers. But we would also obviously look at implementing a parking permit or a parking ticket, so then we can limit the amount of cars, and we can do a safe risk assessment with the traffic management company to work out how many cars we can get in egress, how many cars on ingress, and everything like that to ensure that there is safe access for all people. And we would limit numbers with all of the parties involved from a risk assessment point of view.
Thank you. Right. No further questions from the panel or legal officer at this point. So in that case, I'll invite the interested parties to make any closing remarks they would like to make. Would you mind turning your microphone off? Thank you. At this point, we'll go in the same order.
Thank you very much. May I ask the panel, not being familiar with these events, it has obviously taken quite a lot of work getting together a petition at very, very short notice, and obviously coming here, and some people here have taken time off work to attend. This is an ongoing concern of ours. Is there any facility that some of our concerns could be registered against future licence applications? Because it was purely by accident that we actually heard about this one.
As you...
Do you let me to answer?
No, I think I can answer this. Right. As with planning that committee in another situation, licensing hearings inevitably need to take each hearing as an individual case. I mean, obviously, concerns may, exist over time, but from a purely legal regulatory framework, we have to consider the application that's in front of us, not and history, obviously, but not what might conceivably be applied for in the future. I will ask the legal officer if she wants to add anything to that.
Thank you, Chair. Just to clarify, exactly as you say, in licensing applications, each case is taken on its merits, and if any further applications are made, you'll have an opportunity to comment on those at that time. If during the course of any license that may be granted, there are concerns about how it's running from the licensing objectives, then you have the power to call for a review of the license, and the subcommittee will consider whether they're operating in accordance with the license or otherwise undermining the licensing objectives. A lot of the concerns you've raised relate to matters which aren't actually licensable activities, so for example the football noise and things like that, and they would be best placed to be dealt with by the Council's Environmental Health or appropriate team. Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Or in those cases where they relate to, I don't know, lighting, I think that's been mentioned, the planning enforcement section of the council rather than licensing or environmental health. Right, so as I say, I think you finished there, Mr. Sanderson. So go on to Mrs. Sanderson, Mrs. Fisher.
Could I please just ask, who were the parents of the school consulted before submitting the application? What is the target audience? Obviously selling alcohol is for adult consumption, and so at what events do they feel it is necessary to be selling alcohol when it is actually just a secondary school setting where pupils are meant to be just kept safe? And I reiterate my concerns regarding safeguarding. Thank you.
No, this is for closing statements, really. Well, if you can answer the specific question, yes. Interested parties said everything, because Mrs. Sanderson, I'll just check that you are making. Right, in this case, now you can make a closing statement, sorry, and if you want to address anything that's been said, that is your time to do so.
So I was anticipating this. Some of the objections were the prevention of children from harm, obviously. So I looked at the last few years. We average a 60% adult population at the fireworks event. Obviously, there are some children, some of our teenagers that come along on their own, and a Challenge 25 policy is in place as is necessary. And that is also managed by a bar rather than ourselves. We don't run the bar. We have a company that comes in as a vendor and does that themselves. So actually, from a risk point of view, there is that risk there. We also have all of our senior leaders on site for that event, all of whom are safeguarding leads, and all know there's children that our children that potentially would be at more risk because of vulnerabilities and stuff like that. Just kind of a closing statement from me in terms of a track record point of view. Mr. Simonson did mention the complaints. So obviously he said 101 complaints were related to the 3G pitch, so a total of 102 complaints with my one for the event last year. Some of those have been during the school day, and like I said, 94 of those then are related to the 3G lettings bit. We have put control measures in place. We've spent about £10,000 on putting in new trees, albeit they haven't grown yet. And we have put in an additional fence that was done over the October half term, and new trees were put in over Easter. We've also reduced the hours in response to that. So we're not recognising there is a problem in terms of the noise. We are saying that actually we are working with our neighbours and doing that. And by doing that, schools are a commercial entity now, and by doing that, the reduction in hours has cost Cornwallis £19,000 annually. So that's not a small amount of money to just say we're not going to have when actually a separate entity, but the licensing, the premises, the license that we have for that pitch it does allow that. We welcome meetings. We've had meetings on site. We have taken some decibel readings, but there has been no log, albeit we are going forward putting a decibel meeting on the beta on the back of the school building, and that will alert the site and IT manager with any perks. From an event point of view, we already employ car park marshals, an AV company, a company to do our fireworks, a company that does the security, and have the St John's ambulance on site. We will, for next year, if granted, even if not granted and we go for a temporary event notice, we will be employing a noise monitoring company and also a traffic monitoring company for the road. And if need be, one of the concerns was that there was too much smoke, and in that traffic monitoring plan, we would ensure that across the period of time where them fireworks are going off, that the road is closed for safety. I wasn't at that end, so I can't actually vouch for whether it was smoky or not. We have no CCTV going back that far to see. So, had those concerns been raised at the time, we'd be able to answer them properly.
Thank you very much indeed. May I ask if the subcommittee members have any final questions for any party present? In that case, I turn to the legal... Oh, sorry, Denise.
I just got one.
I looked away just as you raised your hand. Sorry.
You know me. Right, what was my question now? Oh gosh, it's an age thing. Oh yes, while the event's going on, and I'm hearing what you're saying about what you're hoping to do for future events, but while the event's going on, is there a contact number or somewhere that residents living nearby could contact if there was an issue?
Yeah, so in the letter that went, we done it last year for the first year because of the concerns raised over the 3G pitch. There was a noise complaints line, so it was calling the main number, and it was extension number 8 that came through to my mobile.
Okay, thank you. I turn to the legal officer to ask whether there are any further matters she'd like to ask questions about or raise.
Thank you, Chair. Just one thing that's come up from some of these closing speeches. If the committee were minded to grant the application, would you be agreeable to an additional condition regarding hosting a residents' meeting in advance of any events?
It would be something that we would be open to. Being completely transparent and honest, it's something that we done at the start of our 3G pitch application, and it didn't go down too well. So we would host that in a mutual setting with members of the committee or members of the licensing team around, because unfortunately it wasn't as unhostile as this meeting is.
Sorry. Oh, got the flashing red lights there. I think my mic. Thank you very much indeed. Right. I think that means that we have concluded the public part of the meeting. The subcommittee members and the legal advisor will now go into closed session to discuss the representations made and come to a decision. It's now approaching 25 past. How long do you think? About
12 o'clock?
12 o'clock, yes. We will return at 12 o'clock and give a, yeah, I'll just finish a sentence. So, you had a question? I'm sorry, planning matters are not for consideration in a licensing hearing.
I believe that he's referring to Human Rights Article 8. Yes. Yeah, so hearings regarding the Licensing Act 2003 are governed by the hearings regulations, and they are very clear that you cannot introduce evidence at a hearing that has not previously been raised. So because Mr. Sanderson hadn't raised the evidence in respect of the numbers of complaints in his original representation, it's not something that can be raised at a hearing. If it had been raised in advance, then it could have been done, but you can't do that at a hearing, I'm afraid.
I'm sorry, this is a licensing subcommittee hearing. Issues relating to discharge of planning conditions or environmental health need to be raised entirely separately with those relevant sections and are not for consideration by a licensing hearing under any circumstances. And if we take them into account either way in our decision, that would be ultra vires and possibly maladministration. So as I was saying, this meeting will now adjourn the public session and go into the committee room to discuss our decision. And we will return at 12 o'clock in public to announce that decision. Thank you. Thank you everyone for your patience. We are a few minutes past our scheduled reconvening time, but not too late, I hope. Are we? Thank you very much, Jordan. Right, I'll reconvene the meeting. I will now read out the Licensing Subcommittee's decision in respect to the new premises licence application for the Cornwallis School. The written decision, which will be circulated shortly, will provide full reasons for the decision. In the meantime, we wanted to thank all parties who attended and recognise the importance that they play in the licensing process. The decision of the Licensing Subcommittee is to grant the licence for the sale of alcohol and opening hours only, with the hours as applied for subject to additional conditions. The sale of alcohol shall be permitted on no more than 2 occasions per year, specifically for the fireworks and event and the Heart of Hospice each year, with each event lasting no more than a single day. There shall be a dedicated telephone number for members of the public to contact the school during events. The sale of alcohol shall not be permitted during the school's timetabled educational hours. Full reasons will be provided in the written decision, which will follow this hearing within 5 working days. That will include information on how a party to the application may appeal the decision if they so wish. The hearing is formally closed, and thank you all for coming.